Ladies and gentlemen, we're floating in space.
All I want in life's a little bit of love to take the pain away, sings Jason Pierce repeatedly on the first track of his epic masterpiece, Ladies and Gentlemen, We're Floating in Space. Exactly what kind of love he wants, however, is up for debate. At first glance it seems obvious. Pierce split up with his partner, and the album tells the story of somebody craving love and affection after a devastating breakup. Sure, but considering Pierce's drug-fueled past, lyrics referencing hardcore drug use, and the fact that the album's literally made to look like a pharmaceutical drug, many also argue that the album is about drug addiction entirely. I guess it could be both, or neither. Maybe Pierce had even bigger ambitions and wanted the record to be something more than simply an ode to drugs or a mere breakup album. Let's buy the ticket, take the ride.
Drugs have done good things for us. If you don't believe they have, do me a favor, take all your albums, tapes, CDs, and burn them. Because you know what? The musicians who made that great music that has enhanced your lives throughout the years are real fucking high.
In his memoir, former Spacemen 3 bassist Will Carruthers explains, "I didn't want to write about drugs, but then to write a book about Spacemen 3 without drugs in it would be absurd." Spacemen 3 formed in 1982 when rugby teenagers Jason Pierce and Pete Kember met and quickly bonded over three things: music, drugs, boredom. All they wanted was to make music of their own, music for and about drugs, writes Eric Morse in his biography Spacemen 3 and the Birth of Spiritualized. What else was there to do in rugby anyway? The Spacemen would go on to release 4 official studio albums, as well as numerous EPs, live and official albums, drawing inspiration from early psych champions such as the 13th Floor Elevators and the Chocolate Watch Band, to proto-punk acts like the Stooges, Velvet Underground and Suicide. The key characteristics of their music were heavily distorted guitars, drones, soft vocals, and overtly simple chord progressions, sometimes not even changing chords at all. While today considered one of the most influential UK guitar bands, it wasn't the music that initially gave Spacemen 3 a reputation, it was the drugs. From openly discussing their drug use in interviews to coining their infamous catchphrase, Alan McGee, founder of legendary Creation Records, recalls, "There was so much drug use going on in the band that it was hard to keep up with it all. Sonic was just off his nuts, and then later on Jason was completely off his nuts. I think the only band that took more drugs than Spacemen 3 were the Happy Mondays." By the late 80s, Spacemen 3 began to fall apart as a result of Kember being distracted by Pierce's girlfriend, Kate Radley, who was following the band around a lot. Be it tour buses, gigs, or the studio, she was there. Pierce eventually went on to form Spiritualized, recruiting Radley on keyboards. The first album, Laser Guided Melodies, was released in 1992 to stellar reviews. A tour de force of hypnotic space rock, the album explores everything from vibrant, repetitive minimalism to ethereal, introspective dream pop. A subsequent release, Pure Face, followed in 1995, and this was also the year that Kate Radley secretly married another scrawny rock star, none other than The Verve's Richard Ashcroft. This juicy love triangle was kept from the press until a whopping 2 years later, when Jason Pierce and Kate Radley officially ended their 10-year relationship, shortly before the release of his 1997 magnum opus. So, considering everything we know now, what is Ladies and Gentlemen really about? Love? Drugs? Both? Neither? Well, let's begin by clarifying that no matter what it's about, it doesn't change the fact that it's one hell of a record. Jason Pierce's biggest sounding album yet is a larger-than-life cocktail of in-your-face rock and roll, gospel, blues, and spaced-out psychedelia. An adrenaline-fueled roller coaster ride blasting through the entire range of human emotion, whilst exploring themes of loss, heartbreak, unrequited love, addiction, longing, and pain. Like all great art, Ladies and Gentlemen is also ambiguous, and of course, Pierce never intended it to be clear whether the album is about love or drugs. But that doesn't mean we can't speculate, and we don't have to dig very deep to find the blurry line either. The album begins with a distant female voice announcing,
"Ladies and gentlemen, we're floating in space."
Followed by Jason Pierce's beautiful line, "All I want in life's a little bit of love to take the pain away." The distant voice belongs to none other than Kate Radley, which leads us to believe that the song is about the end of their relationship. I mean, she's the one responsible for putting Pierce in the vast emptiness of space in the first place. Or to rephrase, the endless, dark vacuum that is heartbreak. From time to time, we also hear the sound of a beeping satellite, symbolizing perhaps the distance between the two former lovers, drifting further and further apart. But it gets more complicated than that. In the latter half of the song, Pierce very subtly switches the word love for dope, possibly giving the song a druggier meaning. And in this context, could space maybe mean the inner depths of his mind? Lyrics like, "Please put your sweet hand in mine and float in space and drift in time" also seem to suggest someone experiencing an ecstatic high. Either way, it's a beautiful song and a testament to Pierce's songwriting ability and impressive production. On track 3, things become a bit more obvious, because at least to me, I Think I'm in Love is unmistakably about heroin. A two-part psychedelic odyssey, the narcotic opening puts the listener in the place of someone clearly about to inject some illegal drugs. Its trippy soundscapes give off a trance-like effect, and we get lyrics like "Feel the warmth of the sun in me" and the song then transforms into something more upbeat, yet psychedelic. The drugs take hold, drums come out of nowhere, and we enter a repetitive groove that you wish would go on forever. But what makes the track truly unique is Pierce's ingenious lyrics, where every line of the character's confidence is followed by a flood of self-doubt. It's a perfect depiction of how drugs twist our perception, fooling us into believing that we rule the world, when in reality, it's probably just Las Vegas. For the remainder of the album, we follow what appears to be a fairly linear story of somebody going through the stages of grief after a relationship ends. In Stay With Me, he tries to bargain, desperately urging them not to leave. In Home of the Brave, he convinces himself he doesn't even miss the person, while dulling his emotions with drugs and alcohol. The chaotic, crazy instrumentation of the individual seems to suggest he's on the verge of having a mental breakdown, and in the gorgeous Broken Heart, he arrives at his most vulnerable and depressed. As a last resort, he cries out to the Lord, the only one who might still listen, before finally reaching some kind of acceptance on cool waves. Pretty straightforward. The character has been through hell and back and come out the other side stronger, better. And on any regular album, the story would have probably ended right about here. But Ladies and Gentlemen is not any album. Why not have the final song be an epic 17-minute ode to heroin? "Hey man, there's a hole in my arm where all the money goes," sings Pierce as he robs the listener of closure and makes us question if the album was about his drug addiction all along. There's a hole in my arm where all the money goes. So, again, what is Ladies and Gentlemen really about? While promoting the album, Pierce shared some valuable insight into his thought process, which might clear some doubts.
Feel these things that you wrote about?
I think once you've written a song, the author of the song isn't important anymore. When you listen to the Righteous Brothers singing, you've lost that little feeling. I think you don't consider the writer and his, what the story was behind that song. You relate that song to you. Nobody wants to hear songs about mediocrity and middle ground kind of thing. So they're extremes, they're high highs, low lows. I don't live in those extremes, otherwise I
Did you ever?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know at times, but I guess if anybody lived in those kind of extremes that are in the music, you'd be pretty schizophrenic. It is stealing, the distance between electricity and broken heart on that record is phenomenal.
Were you kind of like writing a fictional story then?
Not really, because people do go through that, people do feel that, people do feel those kind of extreme emotions, but I wanted to capture that more than it was part of my life at that time.
Let's also not forget to address the elephant in the room, the album art. One of the most brilliant designs of all time, surely, ladies and gentlemen, is literally packaged as a pharmaceutical drug. On the back, there's additional dosage advice, and the actual CD is even found inside its own blister pack. Going through the information leaflet, we find the credits, or active ingredients, further information on how to take the medicine, and, most importantly, what it is used for. We read, "Spiritualized is used to treat the heart and soul." In the end, Ladies and Gentlemen isn't an autobiographical album about Jason Pierce's heartbreak or his drug addiction. It is something more profound. It is Pierce's desire to try to help those who are suffering in the only way he knows how, through the spirit of rock and roll, and a noble intent for his music to serve as a remedy, not only emotionally and spiritually, but also in physical form. Music is the drug. Ladies and Gentlemen was released in June of 1997 to universal acclaim and was even named Album of the Year by premier British music magazine NME. Though today sidelined by the behemoths OK Computer and Urban Hymns, at the time it must have felt kinda sweet for Pierce to have beaten out The Verve especially. Jokes aside, all his life, Jason Pierce had used drugs to try to numb the pain, which ended up nearly costing him his life. Pain and painkillers go hand in hand, says Will Carruthers. Sometimes, painkillers are so strong that you forget what's causing the pain in the first place. With Ladies and Gentlemen, We're Floating in Space, Pierce aimed at an alternative to all the perilous painkillers out there, whether it be drugs, relationships, food, work, gambling, or sex, because he knows that music has the power to save lives and to be our greatest companion on this fleeting journey through the deepest, darkest depths of space. Music is always there for us, ready to ease our pain, treat our hearts, and heal our souls. Our only friend until...
Good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth.